Welcome to the Pain Free for Good podcast, where we rediscover our body's natural ability to heal. This space is for those who have experienced chronic pain, illness, disease, or emotional trauma, and are ready to reclaim the power within themselves. Here, we explore healing, awareness, and the quiet wisdom already living inside of all of us. I'm your host, Heather Peterson, and I'm so glad you're here. Hello, welcome back to the Pain Free for Good podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today. Today, we're going to keep expanding on the things that we've previously talked about. So far, I've shared my story, my husband's story. We've gone over the discovery process. And today, I want to further your knowledge on the mind-body connection and what that might look like for you. We live in a culture that treats the body like a machine. If something hurts, we look for the broken part. If we're not optimally performing, we take a pill, we get a shot, we have surgery. But what if the symptoms are more than mechanical problems? What if the body is responding to stress, to unresolved emotions, to fear, to survival mode, to the stories we carry, to the environment we live in, to the nervous system that no longer feels safe? Over the last several years, I've read so many books about all aspects of the mind-body connection. I've read different authors. I've heard from doctors. I've sat in on seminars. I've taken in a lot of research. And despite healing from different angles, every single one of those point to the same truth, that what happens in the mind happens in the body. They are not separate. Dr. Sarno says the idea that pain means injury or damage is deeply ingrained in the American consciousness. People say, I'm afraid of hurting myself again, so I'm going to be very careful of what I do. In good faith, this idea has been fostered by the medical profession and other healers for years. It has been assumed that pain is due to injury or disease without scientific validation of these diagnostic concepts. Now, Dr. John Sarno, who we talked about in previous episodes, had great success in the treatment of many disorders, chronic pain, disease, breakdown of the body, and had a very different diagnosis and a very high success rate at that, with understanding what happens in the mind happens in the body. Dr. Sarno says, medical science has had a love affair with the laboratory, believing that nothing is valid unless it can be demonstrated in that arena. Unfortunately, emotions are difficult to study in a lab. One of these is the mind and its organ, the brain. Emotions do not lend themselves to test tube experiments and measure, and so modern medical science has chosen to ignore them. The majority of practicing physicians do not consider that emotions play a significant role in causing physical disorders. So today, I want to expand on a little bit of Dr. Sarno's work and what I teach my clients and the importance of his concepts. The first of which is the Freudian term, the ego versus the id. I like to do a little bit of a switch around on the ego versus the id when I'm teaching my clients because I feel like it's a little bit more practical and applicable to them. The ego is our socialized self, and the id is our most instinctual self. And so I like to liken it, the id, I like to call the kid. The kid is like a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old is very instinctual. They want the red cup, not the blue cup. They don't like that person. They don't like you. You're fat. They're just very instinctual. They're going to say whatever comes to mind. And they do this until they're 7 years old. You meet most children, they're going to say things like it is. There's no beating around the bush. But by the time you're 7 years old, you become socialized into society, and you're no longer speaking up your truth, if you will. You're just more socialized. You've gotten that stern look from your parents. Maybe you've got the smack on the bottom and you're following into line to be acceptable within your family unit, within your community. And you are very concerned with getting that love and that validation because that means you are part of the tribe. So over time, the ego and the id, they don't fade away. They actually battle with each other. And I want you to think about how this applies to you in your own life. You wake up in the morning And probably the first thoughts you have are, I have all these things to do. I have to go to work. I have all this responsibility. I have to take care of my family. I have to pay the mortgage. I have to be responsible. I have to be nice to that person. You know, how often does this show up in your life? How many things can you think of from the time you wake up till the time you go to bed of, I have to, and I should, and I need to conform and need to be nice and take the higher road, things like that. This is the ego talking. But the 2-year-old never dies within us. The 2-year-old is very alive. The id is alive inside of us. And the id is saying, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to pay my bills. I don't want to get that workout in. I want to be a lazy bum on the couch. I want to go play outside. I want to go do all these fun things. I don't want to be responsible. And so they butt heads every single day. What is your ego versus your kid saying to you that is butting heads, that is causing conflict, that is causing this cortisol response, this fight or flight mode to stay stuck, elevated all day long? Maybe it's your kids fighting. Maybe it's just a stress or a pressure in the marriage, or maybe it's you're not getting along with a family member. Think of all the things that keep you stuck in this fight or flight mode unconsciously, because a lot of times we don't know what we're actually thinking about. It's just like static background noise on in the background. So what do we do about it? We have this ego, we have this id, they're constantly in conflict. And I want you to think of this from a place of awareness. I like to come from a third place, a place called the watcher. It's like a wise old owl sitting up in a tree, observing the situation, not casting judgment on the ego or the id, the kid, but offering compassion, being like, I know you don't want to go to your job. I know you don't want to be responsible today. I can understand and appreciate that, but I can also understand like you have a responsibility or your power is going to be shut off. And so there's an offering of compassion to both sides, because while they do butt heads, while they do create conflict and this chemical change within your body, you can offer compassion, and you don't have to side with either one. You just have to understand and become aware. Oh, my blood pressure is rising. The anxiety that I feel in my body is rising. I'm thinking about the past. I'm thinking about the future. And I can offer compassion. I can understand why you're thinking those things. And we can move to a place of awareness, of just offering compassion to both sides. And it lets that cortisol come down out of fight or flight and into homeostasis, where we create serotonin. And serotonin is a relaxing chemical that we make within our body. And then we might even be able to offer ourselves love, which creates oxytocin. And when we're creating serotonin and oxytocin, we're no longer creating cortisol and adrenaline. Long-term, cortisol and adrenaline is going to break down the body. It's going to cause pain. It's going to cause disease. It's very detrimental to our body long-term. But if we're creating oxytocin and serotonin, those are actually building and healing our body. And so what can you do today to offer compassion to yourself, to say, I understand why you do that. I understand why it's important that you do that specific thing, and offer compassion to yourself and not a place of judgment any longer. Another thing I want to point out is the rage to soothe ratio. Dr. Sarno talks a lot about this. What are we doing every day that's causing the rage? I talked about the pressure cooker in the last episode and all of the ingredients that you put into the pressure cooker, and think about what that might be for you. It might be all the laundry list of things you have to do around the house, the yard work, the laundry, the making of the dinners, the thinking about the dinners, the running the kids the to and fro, the working the long hours and being responsible, and dealing with all the outside noise, if you will, that might be coming into your life. And you put it all in this pressure cooker. You put the lid on, seal it up real nice and tight, and you never let out any steam. What is that going to do to your body long term? Long term, you're going to have major pain, side effects if you don't ever release that steam. You have to release the steam with soothing factors. So you have this rage that gets weighed down on the scale, and you have to rebalance it with the soothing factors. The soothing factors have to weigh much more, have to take up much more weight in your life than the rage. And when this happens and the rage lessens, the chemical change once again changes. You're no longer making the adrenaline and the cortisol. You're making the oxytocin and the serotonin. So I just want you to think, what might be those soothing factors for me? For me, I wake up in the morning and I like to lay in bed until I can think of something that I'm excited about. What am I excited about today? What are some soothing factors? I love getting up and I love looking out the window and being grateful for my home and the land that we live on, seeing the animals outside, being grateful for my husband who's laying next to me. Everybody's healthy, happy, home, they're safe. My kids have made it home from all their friend activities from the previous night. I have a peace of mind in my heart that everybody's okay. That's a soothing factor for me. Listening to my children talk and joke around with each other, that's a soothing factor for me. Being around my animals, it's a soothing factor for me. I love their presence. Drinking my coffee in the morning. My kids know that's my hug and my cup, and I appreciate that. That's a soothing factor for me. Getting my workout in the morning, that's a soothing factor for me. It fills my cup. And communicating with my clients and having success and feeling like we're connecting and understanding, that is a soothing factor for me. And then I might take a break, go outside, feel the sun on my skin and the breeze and the birds, and just taking a moment to be grounded and present and grateful. That's a soothing factor. These aren't getting pedicures and manicures and your hair done and massages. What in your life can you look at today that's a soothing factor? It's the small things in life that add up. It's not these big, grand vacations and such. It's the small little things that add up throughout your day that are going to be the soothing factors. So just take that into mind and apply that. What can I do today to create more soothing than rage? How can I tip the scales and make that soothing have way more weight? Another thing I want you to consider that Dr. Sarno talks a lot about is the age of responsibility. So many women that I see that have pain and disease are in the age of responsibility. The age of responsibility is about 30 to 55. That's when we're seeing a lot of chronic pain and disease, autoimmune, you name it. Anything physical that's manifesting during that age is because of the pressure cooker of life has added up so much. I had a conversation with a client today that was so interesting about this age of responsibility and her raising these young children. And it's the monotonous day after day, raising the kids, telling them, hey, we're going to get along, quit fighting. Everybody needs to be a little bit calmer. And I feel like so many women are just in survival mode. I know I was completely in survival mode for a lot of years. I was just anticipating my kids fighting, anticipating the crying. It was never an if it was going to happen. It was when it was going to happen. So I felt like I was constantly living on edge, living in this pressure cooker of something's about to happen, something's about to happen. And so you take all of the rage, all of the ego and the id throughout the day, and you put it in, and it's a recipe for disaster. The age of responsibility, you have children, you have a mortgage, you have a job, you have so much responsibility of life, and it's a culmination. That steam has not been let off at all. And so you are setting yourself up for disaster if you're not incorporating those soothing factors. Another aspect is pain flaring during emotional stress. So I want you to think, if you are having pain, if you are having disease, when did that start? What was going on in your life when your pain started? I want you to really stop and think about it. Were you going through a hard relationship? Were you raising children? Were you overwhelmed? Were you in a high stress job? Are you trying to take care of parents? Are you in any kind of stressful relationships? Are you putting a lot of weight and stress on yourself to be perfect and to fit into a certain mold and fit into your neighborhood and the dynamics of the community that you live in? What is the emotional accumulation of stress that you have going on in your body when that pain or that disease started? Because it always correlates. Dr. Joe says the fight or flight response puts us out of homeostasis a large part of the time. It could be a car cutting you off, preparing for a big presentation, a fight with your spouse, raising children, a credit card bill that just came in the mail, crashing of your computer hard drive, you have a new gray hair. All of these keep the stress hormones circulating in your body on a constant basis between remembering stressful experiences from the past and anticipating stressful situations coming up in your future. All these repetitive short-term stress is blurred together into a long-term stress. And we all know this as living in survival mode. How many of you are living in survival mode right now? And you have stress and you have pain. I want you to really think about, what are the thoughts I'm thinking that is putting me in this survival mode, this fight or flight response? And if you're to be aware and honest, then you're going to recognize how it's a culmination of everything that's brought you to the pain and the disease. Dr. Joe also said, in fight or flight, life-sustaining energy is mobilized with the body running or fighting. But when there isn't a return to homeostasis because you keep perceiving a threat, there might not actually be a threat, but you might be perceiving it. That energy is lost in the system. You have less energy in your internal environment for rest and repair. Long-term building projects on cellular level and healing on that energy is channeled elsewhere. Cells shut down, they no longer communicate with one another, and they become selfish. It's not time for routine maintenance. It's not time for healing. It's time for defense. It's every cell for itself. So the collective community of cells working together becomes fractured. They can't communicate. The immune and endocrine systems become weakened as genes in those related cells are compromised when information signals from outside the cells are turned off. It's like living in a country where 98% of the resources go towards defense, and nothing is left for schools, for libraries, road building and repair, communication systems, growing of food, and so on. Potholes aren't fixed. Schools suffer. Budget cuts. Students end up learning less. Social welfare programs close down, and there's not enough to feed the masses. Not surprisingly, long-term stress has been linked to anxiety, depression, digestive system problems, memory loss, insomnia, hypertension, heart disease, strokes, cancer, ulcers, rheumatoid arthritis, colds, flu, aging acceleration, allergies, body pain, chronic fatigue, infertility, impotence, asthma, hormonal issues, skin rashes, hair loss, muscle spasms, and diabetes, to just name a few. No organism in nature is designed to withstand the effects of long-term stress. The fear keeps the pain alive and the body continues to break down. So I want you to really just stop and think about this. What is this fear and this stress that is keeping me in the long-term stress? What are the thoughts that I'm continually thinking? What am I thinking all day long? If I was to set an alarm for 7:30 in the morning, what thoughts am I thinking? And if the alarm was to go off at 1 p.m., what are the thoughts I'm thinking? And then it goes off again at 6 p.m. What thoughts am I thinking? Are they positive? Are they negative? Am I in a place of rage, or am I in a state of soothing gratitude? It's just food for thought. I want to talk a little bit about neuroplasticity. For years, scientists believed that once we reach adulthood, our brains were pretty much set in stone. And we know that's not true. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change, to adapt, and create new pathways throughout our entire lives. Think of your brain like a hiking trail. The more you walk the same path, the deeper and easier that trail becomes. Our thoughts, emotions, reactions, and habits work the same way. If you've spent years worrying, fearing, and expecting pain, those pathways become well-worn trails in the brain. The good news is that we can create new trails. We like to think of this as a bumpy road. Say, if you're living in Utah, you're familiar with our mountain ranges. I live on the Wasatch Back. And a lot of times for my clients who are in person, I say, imagine if they live on the other side of the mountain. I said, imagine I ask you to come to our session and you cannot take a car, you cannot take the highway, you have to come up and over the mountain on a four-wheeler. How would you feel if I asked you that? And a lot of times people are like, what? Why? What are you talking about? Why would you ask me to do that? I'm just saying, just pretend here. Just pretend I asked you to come up and over the mountain. And you get on the four-wheeler, you start going up, you kind of know you have to go up and over, but you don't exactly know how you're going to traverse the mountain. You look for trails and it's a little sketchy and you might run into a rattlesnake and it might be scary and hot and you might have blood, sweat, and tears by the time you make it to my door, but you do it, hypothetically. And I say, how was it? How was your journey here on the bumpy road? And you're like, that sucked. I didn't like it at all. That was not easy. I didn't appreciate that. And I say, well, you got to go back home the same way, hypothetically. So hypothetically, they take the same road and they somewhat know the direction they're going and where they came from. And they pass familiar road signs that, oh, that looks familiar. I'm pretty sure that's where I turned last time. And eventually they make it back home. And hypothetically, I say, next time you come to the session, you're going to take the same road. And they have a little bit less unwillingness to do it. Hypothetically, they do it again. So they take the same path that they took before, and it's more familiar. It's not as scary. They're a little more prepared. They've maybe changed their clothes, maybe addressed some fears that they had before, and they get to the top and they take the view in. They're like, wow, I made it to the top and now I kind of know where I'm going. And so I'm going to head back down this mountain and on our merry little way. And they do it and it's a little bit easier. It's not necessarily fun, but they do it. So they make it all the way to my place of business and we have our session. So I hypothetically tell them, we're going to do this back and forth, back and forth. And over a period of a few times, you're going to know exactly where you have to go, where you've come from, what things along the way you're going to see. And this, once upon a time, that was a bumpy road you're bushwhacking through, becomes a well-worn path. And over time, that well-worn path is no longer a trail. It becomes widened out. It becomes paved. It becomes like a super highway. And so this is how neuroplasticity works with the brain. It becomes these old neurons of networks start breaking down and you create new neurons of networks and that fire and wire together and that create this new worn path, this new super highway. And what happens to the old thoughts in the mind, the old belief system, the old fear, the old stress, it crumbles away. It's lost its power. It's no longer useful because you would rather take this new bumpy road that's become your superhighway because it has a better view. You're out in nature. You're enjoying yourself. It might take a little longer, but it's worth it. And this is how neuroplasticity works in the brain. If the brain can learn pain, it can also learn safety. If it can create a pain pathway, it can create a healing pathway. Now, on the topic of epigenetics, most of us have been taught that our genes determine our future. If your parents had anxiety, depression, autoimmune disease, chronic pain, you might think you're destined to have it too. Epigenetics tells a different story. Your genes are like the piano keys, but your environment, your thoughts, your beliefs, your stress levels, your relationships, your nutrition, your sleep, and lifestyle determine which keys get played. Genes are the blueprint, but they're not the contractor. Just because a blueprint exists doesn't mean that part of the house has to be built. Once upon a time, like I said in my previous episode, my mom had chronic fatigue terribly, terribly. I remember coming home and my mom being in bed day after day because she just couldn't get enough energy to get up. And after I had my last daughter, I had the same situation, terribly exhausted, so miserable, not enough energy to get through my day. And my mom said to me, "Oh, honey, I think you have chronic fatigue. You should go get checked for that." So I did because I thought it was genetic. And what do you know? My doctor said, "Oh yeah, I think you do. So let's put you on this medication and that. And your adrenals are shot. And oh, look at this, look at that, look at this." Eventually I was put on hypothyroid medication, told I was going to be on that for the rest of my life, which I did not like hearing. And over the course of hearing about the mind-body connection, I understood that doesn't have to be my blueprint. I can create whatever I want. And so I did. I created a new blueprint for myself, and I lived that with my lifestyle, with my environment, with my thoughts, with my beliefs, with my relationships, with my nutrition, with my sleep. I created what I wanted. I made the roadmap. I took the bumpy road, the road less traveled, because I didn't want to accept that that was my destiny. Our repeated experiences, perceptions, emotions, stress responses, and behaviors are constantly sending messages to both our brain and our body. So I want to talk about what this looks like. What does this look like tangibly? What can I tangibly take away from this information? And I want to talk to you about the foundation of what I tell every single client. Here it is. This is what you will come back to every single time you are suffering from anxiety, from depression, from pain, disease. This is what you're going to go to, okay? I'm going to lay it out there. If you were to liken it into this big, huge 100-year-old willow tree, and you have this beautiful, glowing tree with long branches swaying in the wind, what you want is the results, the fruits of your labor, if you will, okay? But we don't just get fruits of our labor just because. We have to put in the work to get the fruits of our labor, right? And so if we were to really break this down, we don't automatically just get branches. We have to have a trunk of our tree. We have to have a root system. We have to plant a seed in the ground. And before we can even plant a seed in the ground, we have to make our soil nutritious. We have to take out the bugs, the weeds, make sure it's nutritious, make sure it's moist and it has plenty of sunlight to be able to even plant that seed. So I want to talk to you about the soil. The soil is the foundation that you will come back to every single time you're having a bad day, if you're having pain. And I want you to think about these 3 concepts, okay? What is my physiology? If I was to show up to this podcast and I was just slumped in my chair and I was like, "Hi, are you ready to hear my podcast today?" It doesn't sound like I'm really into it. But if I was to come and speak into the microphone and say, "Hello, welcome to Pain Free for Good podcast. I have information that's important." That shows where I have authority. I have confidence. I know what I'm talking about. And so how does that look for you as far as body language goes? Are you slumped down in your chair because you're having pain, because you're having a bad day? Are you feeling defeated? Are you having your heart closed off? What does that look like for you? Are you laying down? Or are you coming at it from a place of confidence? Can you stand up straight? Can you sit up straight? Can you put your shoulders back? Can you put a smile on your face? This is what physiology looks like. And how do we change our physiology? How can we get to a place where this is common? This is just how we are. This is how we present ourselves. This is just naturally how I feel. I feel confident every single day. I don't have to question whether I am. I just am. So a couple of things I like to personally do is I like to put on music in the morning. I love music. It feeds my soul. I want you to think about, have you ever listened to a sad song and then you get more sad and then you want to listen to another sad song. So you put on another sad song and you get more depressed. And then pretty soon you're crying in your car and you don't even know why, but it's just because the song is sad and it touches you and you're feeling emotional, but it's not exactly making you have confidence. So what do? We put on a happy song. We put on an exciting song, something that we like to move our body to, that we can sing the words to, that makes us feel elevated. And pretty soon we're rolling the windows down. We have our hair in the breeze and the sunroof's open and we're jamming out and we're putting on another song that makes us feel better and better. And pretty soon we're just happy for no reason. This is how we communicate with the body. So you can make a playlist with your most favorite songs. And I call mine my pump up playlist. And I put it on when I'm in a mood, when I'm having negative thinking. I put on this pump up playlist and I immediately feel elevated, So what does that look like for you? Can you make a playlist? Can you make something that's going to increase you? Or do you want to feel just negative all the time? That's one way. The other way to change your physiology, your confidence level, is to go out in nature. maybe you just need to get out of the house. Maybe you just need to go sit outside in the sun and let the breeze blow on your skin and just be reminded, oh, it feels good to be outside. Maybe you just take off your shoes and walk on the grass. Go get your hands dirty, put them in the dirt. Go put your feet in the stream, in the lake, in the ocean. People wonder why people love the ocean. It's the sound. It's the feeling of the sand on your skin. It is very grounding, very, makes you just feel alive. That's why people love nature. They love to be out in the forest. They love to be out in awe of being curious about, man, this world is beautiful. And so maybe you just need to get out of the house. I don't think we were made to be inside looking at screens all day. I think we need to get outside and appreciate nature, to feel our confidence, to feel just a little bit of self-love that was going to raise our confidence, that's going to change our physiology. So that is number one. If you want to get out of pain, if you want to get out of disease, if you want to get out of anxiety and depression, change your physiology. Number two, focus. What are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the pain, the intensity, how long it's going to be there, when it's going to come back, how long it's going to be around? Or are you just living in the moment? Are you thinking about the past, the future? The past has nothing but depression, and the future has nothing but anxiety. And so what does the present moment have? The present moment has peace, contentment, love. So what are you living in? The past, the future, or the present moment? Are you thinking about what you can control or what you can't control on a daily basis? If you were to set an alarm for 3 days during the day, morning, midday, and evening, are you focused on what you can control or what you can't control? Are you focused on what you have or what you don't have? Is your cup half full or half empty? What is it that you're focusing on? How many of us have wanted or desired an item or a vehicle, a certain make and model and color of a vehicle, and then all of a sudden you see that specific vehicle all over? That's because what you focus on magnifies. Maybe it's a purse, maybe it's a pair of shoes, maybe it's a vacation, and all of a sudden that's all you see everywhere you go because what you focus on magnifies. Look at your For You page on Instagram. That's going to show you exactly what you're focused on. That's going to show you what is coming up over and over and over. Maybe that needs to be adjusted, what you're focusing on, what you're seeing every day. Is it negativity? Is it unease? What do you need to do to readjust what you're focusing on? Can you focus on what you do have instead of what you don't have? What you can control instead of what you can't control? This is such a foundational principle. So we have physiology, we have focus, and number 3 is our language. I'm not talking English and Spanish. I am talking, I can't, it's hard, I'm never going to get better, I don't feel good, I can't do anything, I'm just going to be like this forever. That's all depreciating language. That is arguing for your limitations. That is not going to benefit you in any way. That is not going to be able to make a new thought. You are going to be stuck on the hamster wheel of pain and negativity when you have negative language. I want you to think, I can, I will, I'm going to. I have a sign right here. If you're watching on YouTube, I can and I will. My son bought this for me. It is so empowering. I had this conversation with my daughter a couple of years going up a steep mountain. We were hiking and she was just struggling. And I stood there with her and I said, Berkeley, what language do you have in your mind right now? And she's like, it's hard. I'm just not strong. This is too hard for me. And I said, that's just what you're telling yourself. You can, and you will, and you're going to, but you have to believe it. And so what do you know? She started saying it. We started saying it together as we were walking. I can and I will. I can and I will. I can and I will. What is it in your life that you need to say that to yourself about? I can, I will, I'm going to, I'm getting a little better every day. Things are a little easier. Things are going good for me. What is that positive language that you need to be speaking to yourself instead of negativity? Once again, if you were to set an alarm for 3 times in your day, what is your language? What are you constantly saying to yourself? My husband, we have a running joke where he was saying, I got screwed on that one, got screwed again, got screwed over on this. And I had to stop him and say, hey, are you aware that you're saying this? Are you aware that this is your language? It's not beneficial for you. And it's just making you feel like absolute garbage. So every time he would say it, I would say, oh, got screwed on that one. And it kind of became a running joke. And so now when he says it, which is very rare, I haven't heard him say it in quite a while, actually, because you can't change something if you're unaware that you're doing it. But if you become aware that you were unaware, that is where you have accountability and the ability to change. Then you become aware that you are aware, and then the whole language of negativity falls away. And then you're just left with confidence. You're left with focusing on the right things, and you're left with living in the present moment and feeling elevated emotions. The elevated emotions are what is going to propel you forward on your healing journey. You cannot heal when you are in cortisol and adrenaline and fight or flight over things going on in your life that you have no control over. You will heal when you have the courage and the willingness to think a new thought about your life, about your ability to heal, about calming the nervous system, about speaking kindly of yourself, loving yourself. This loving kindness is so important. I want to share a little story with you. I've shared this with a few people lately, but I have this broody hen. I call her Broody Judy. Every spring, it's the same thing. I don't have a rooster, so she doesn't have an ability to have chicks. But every spring, she stays in the coop, sitting on the eggs that have been laid, the unfertilized eggs, and she thinks she's going to become a mom. It's sad, but it's just the nature of things. I don't have a rooster for her, and nor do I want to have one right now. But she thinks every spring, if I sit here long enough, I'm going to get a chick. So every day I go out, I pull her out of the coop. She's hot, she's sweaty, she's dehydrated, she's making herself sick because she thinks she's going to get something by doing something that's not going to be helpful for her. So we have to think of ourselves like this broody hen. We have to pull ourselves out of the hen house over and over and day after day until we realize, oh, I don't need to sit in here. I don't need to be sitting on this negativity. I don't need to be sitting in this language, in this focus, in this physiology that's not helping me in any way. Pull yourself out of the coop, go for a walk, go outside, put on some music, get out in nature, and change your state. Our state then becomes the soil that we can plant a new thought in. If we have confidence, if we have a positive focus and positive language, we are going to think positive thoughts. But if our confidence is very low, if our language is negative, and if our focus is always negative, we are going to spiral into pain and to disease, and we will continue on that hamster wheel until those 3 things change. So if you want to have results, plant the soil, then you can plant the seed, then you can have new beliefs, because a thought over and over and over becomes a belief. And a belief, you can take action with a belief, and actions lead to results. So I just want you to think tomorrow, today even, in this moment, whatever time of day you're listening to this, I can start fresh. It's a blank slate. Every morning when I wake up, it's a blank slate. What are the things I'm going to change? How can I change my physiology, my focus, my language? What can I get excited about for today? Can I lay here in bed until I'm excited for one thing? Maybe you can lay in bed until you can think of 20 things. And then it's like a kid on Christmas. You can't lay there in bed anymore. You're just so excited to get up and live your life. And that is where the healing happens. So notice the negativity and change. Sometimes I get in a spiral and I have to literally clap my hands and say, change. Change the thought, change the negativity, change the focus, change the language. So what does that look like for you going forward? I hope this was beneficial and that you can really take this and run with it and change your life, change the people around you. Because when you change, it is like a mirror neuron. You have that higher vibration, that higher frequency. The people around you are going to feel it and they are going to respond in kind. So the most empowering thing I've learned is that we're not prisoners of our past, of our current situation, our diagnosis, or even our genetics. Our brains can change, our bodies can adapt, our nervous systems can learn safety again. And when that happens, healing becomes possible. I hope you've enjoyed this message today and that it's helped you in some small way. I hope you can pass this along to someone who might need it. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks for being here today. Thank you for being here with me today. If something in this episode resonated with you, just know that awareness is where our power begins. If you feel called, share this episode with someone who may need it. And don't forget to subscribe so you can continue this journey with me. Until next time, keep listening inward. Your body, your intuition, and your truth already know the way.